Hi, everybody, and welcome to week 2. Last week we talked about identifying our programming purpose, or our why, and taking stock of our current programs. You identified your guiding documents and what they're telling you, and hopefully you also completed a programming matrix to identify where you're doing great and where you might have some gaps. So this week we're going to build on that and talk about how you can start to address places your programs could use some extra love. So maybe you found in your matrix that you have a gap in an area that you want to fill. Maybe you have a current program that doesn't quite fit and needs changes. There are lots of different things that you might be considering, but there are strategies that can be applied to pretty much any situation to start moving forward. So that's what we're going to discuss today. Figuring out where to start when you're trying to make changes or you have an opportunity area that you want to address can be very daunting. So today I'm going to talk through a process you can use to basically pick a place to start and take some concrete next steps. So the strategy that we're going to talk about is based on the concept of human-centered design, which is also called design thinking. And basically design thinking places your users, so our patrons, at the heart of decision making. I'm not going to go into detail about the background of human-centered design or design thinking here in the lecture, but some of our readings will help provide some additional context. So today we're going to really talk through the process, and your readings will help kind of complement the whole picture. A quick note as we start is an important part of this process is involving stakeholders. So that could be colleagues that work in your department, in your library. It could be patrons. It might be subject matter experts, so people who have some specific expertise you're looking to tap into. It could be community partners. So it's a whole variety of people, and you really want to involve those stakeholders all along the way. None of us do our work in a vacuum, and so keeping others involved as we move through these steps is going to be really beneficial. So we are going to talk through these steps of the design thinking process, and I will use some examples to illustrate this along the way. So the first step in this process is to define an opportunity, and you can also think of an opportunity as a problem you'd like to solve. So think about where are the pain points in your programming? Where is there something that you're trying to fix or change or make better? That kind of pain point is an opportunity to improve. So when you look at your matrix, again, is there a blank spot that you want to fill? Is there something that just isn't quite working or isn't quite fitting? Maybe there is some totally different thing about programming that continues to challenge you time and time again. So you're going to kind of think about what is that opportunity that you want to fix? What's the problem you want to solve? And what you're going to do kind of within that step after you define a problem is frame it as a need statement. A need statement helps us understand the underlying need a group has. So the format or kind of recipe for a need statement is who needs what, because or in order to do what? Why do they need this thing? So we want to describe the problem or need, but not in such a way that it identifies a specific solution to that problem. So here's the example that we'll talk about. This first example is too specific. St. Paul residents need flat screen TVs in order to have a more enjoyable experience at the service center, right? So that's basically already telling us the solution is a flat screen TV. But maybe that's not actually the solution. Maybe we're being too specific and too narrow as we're framing this problem. So we could reword it to this just right sentence. St. Paul residents need a way to pass the time in order to have a more enjoyable experience at the service center. So you can see that second one is a broader framing that's open to more solutions. It's not already prescribing what's going on. When you are writing a need statement, it's possible you might notice that it's really hard because you don't actually know what your patrons need. And if that's the case, if that's what you're running into, it's a good indicator that you might need to take a step back and have more conversations with some of your stakeholders, colleagues, patrons, partners, etc., to develop an understanding of those needs. All right, we're going to take our weekly brain break. So stand up, give yourself a stretch, maybe, I don't know, do some jumping jacks or something, and pause the video. Come back when you are ready. All right, so we talked about defining the opportunity, and now we're going to go through the remaining steps of this design thinking process. So once you've defined your opportunity, you've written your need statement, you're going to ideate. So that means brainstorming. So what you can do is spend 5 to 10 minutes writing down ideas that could solve your problem. You want to try to be specific and actionable here. So what are some concrete things you could do to make change? If we use the previous example about the service center, some specific or concrete ideas could include things like survey people in the service center to see what would make a more enjoyable experience. Look at the physical space and identify what could make it more comfortable. One of the recommendations could be add a TV, or it could be something like provide activities for children to stay occupied while their caregiver waits. So you want to come up with just a whole variety. This is the type of brainstorming that doesn't have bad ideas. You're just trying to get things out and get your mind going. Once you've gone through that sort of brainstorming process, you're going to prototype. And so that means that you're going to pick your top idea, or 2 ideas if you want, and really flesh them out. I will warn you that this step can feel a little clunky, especially at first, but bear with it. So what you want to do is think about, what would it take to move this from an idea to reality? Be very specific. Focus on realistic solutions that you can implement. And remember that the key here is progress, not perfection. You don't have to plan the perfect solution or think about all the possible contingencies. Many of us probably identify with the fact that there's a lot of perfectionism in library culture, and this is really a process that tries to push up against the idea of perfectionism and instead say, when we try things, we learn, and that's how we continue to get better. Start where you are. Remember, you don't have to make it perfect. And when you're thinking about actually prototyping, you can do it in a lot of different ways. Maybe you want to draw pictures or create idea boards if you're a really visual person. Maybe you want to write notes. Maybe you want to make a spreadsheet. There's no wrong way to do this, and there's not even a template that I'm providing within the framework of this course, simply because prototyping is doing whatever makes the most sense to you. After you prototype, you're going to test it out, right? This is, in theory, one of the easier steps because you're just implementing your idea. And remember, actually trying something is going to yield better results than spending all your time thinking about how to perfect it, because you're actually going to be able to see how it works out in the real world, not just in your mind. You want to decide how long you'd like to test it out. So maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month, longer, up to you and whatever makes the most sense based on the context of your situation. Now, the last step is iterate. So that means you want to refine based on what you've learned and then try it again. Reflect, make adjustments, and then keep going. Using a feedback loop here is important. So you want to pay attention to what are you seeing or hearing or noticing. And once you do that, make those refinements and try again. Or maybe you might even need to circle back to other parts of the process as a next step. For example, if your original prototype focused on getting feedback from other people, maybe now you want to go back to the ideate stage, do some brainstorming, and come up with ideas or next steps based on that feedback. So you're going to use this process over and over as you identify opportunities and work through pain points. So the content of what you're trying to solve is going to change, but the recipe for approaching the issue can stay the same. And when you think about it, this process is actually quite natural. Breaking it down step by step just ensures that you aren't skipping a step before moving forward. So often this sort of more is more trap that we're trying to work against comes when we try to find solutions right away and just sort of churn out, okay, well, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. But really, when we stop and identify the problem and think through some options, we can avoid falling into a trap of just constantly trying to make changes to see what sticks. All right, everybody's favorite topic, homework. So this week, our outside of classwork is going to focus on learning more about processes and resources that support design thinking and problem solving work, and then trying it out for yourself. One thing I will note is that these concepts of human-centered design or design thinking are very, very rooted in design and corporate environments. Often they're sort of thinking about like customers or users, whereas we tend to think more about sort of like patrons in our community. So all that is to say, finding readings about this or content about design thinking specific to libraries or even nonprofits can be challenging. So as you go through these readings, take what you can and just ignore the pieces that really don't make sense within the context of our work. So our homework is going to be around practicing design thinking for yourself. So use your program matrix to identify an area that you want to problem solve. You're going to write a need statement, brainstorm or ideate, and then prototype. As you're going through this, if you discover that you don't have a strong sense of patron need when you're writing a need statement, just go ahead and choose another problem to solve for the purposes of this assignment, because there's really not going to be enough time to kind of go back and do all of the due diligence you would need to complete this homework for this week. All right, so then discussion posts. There's going to be one original post and one response post. So you're going to share your prototype, your proposed solution, and then reflect on this process. So answer the questions, where was it successful and where was it challenging? And then you're going to do a response post to a classmate. As always, if you are struggling, if you need help, please do get in touch. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone's prototypes and reflections. So take care and have a good week.